Good morning, everyone. This is the time and place for the Planning Hearing Officer meeting of October 10th, 2012. My name is Kristen Asp, and I will be conducting the hearing as Planning Hearing Officer. We have one case on the agenda today, and all of the relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. We have one application for a variance, and there are 4 required findings that are necessary when reviewing a variance. If the evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the criteria, the Planning Hearing Officer can either approve, impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Public notice. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by use of public notices, which were mailed to property owners located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper, as well as posted on the city's website. The hearing will proceed as follows. I will read the description of the application or the request. I'll read any relevant reports received from other city departments of note. I will ask the case planner, Mr. Duong, to make a brief overview of the case, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will be asked to come forward, stating both name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or in opposition to the application and interested parties will be asked to come forward to speak, again clearly stating both name and address, within a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make any closing comments, if desired, in response to testimony given by preceding speakers with a 5-minute limit. The hearing will then be closed and taken under submission. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at the hearing or by submitting written responses and have provided their name and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter, not necessarily the date of today's hearing. In regards to appeals, under the appeal provisions of Title 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the decision date, again, the decision date on the letter, and notice of appeal shall be filed with the Building and Safety Division that's located here in this building on this floor directly across the courtyard in room 101. Speaker cards, I have a bunch of speaker cards here, but again, if you wish to speak, please fill out one of these cards and head them to our recording secretary. So as far as the case, we'll get started. Location is 707 Omar Street, variance case number PVAR 1211971. The applicant is Giuseppe Aliano. Property owners Carol and Jack Cushing, and the description: an application for a standards and setback variance to allow construction of a new 2,179 square foot 2-story single-family residence with an attached 2-car garage with a 14-foot street front setback where a minimum of 25 feet is required, and to allow a driveway 16 feet in length where a minimum of 20 feet is required in the R1 low-density residential zone, described as Lot 188, tract number 6243. I'm going to ask the case planner, Mr. Duong, to make a brief presentation.
Thank you and good morning, Hearing Officer Asp. The case before you, as you stated, is case number PVAR 1211974, located at 707 Omar Street. The applicant is requesting for a setback and standard variance to construct a new single-family residence in the R1 zone. The specific request is to provide a 14-foot front setback and a 16-foot long driveway length. The required distances for the front setback is 25 feet and 20 feet for the driveway length in this zone. The project site is an undeveloped, flat, 5,448 square foot, irregularly shaped lot located near the intersection of Omar Street and Concord Street. Omar Street is a 50-foot wide street as it travels from the east to west, starting from Kellogg Avenue to Concord Street, where it terminates. Once Omar reaches the Arroyo Verdugo Wash, the street narrows to approximately 9 feet wide, which run parallel to the wash and ends at Concord Street. And the subject property directly fronts the Arroyo Verdugo Wash. The subject site is currently undeveloped and contains 2 mature sycamore trees, one located at the rear and the second one located at the front. These trees are 34 inches and 24 inches in diameter, respectively. The lot is trapezoidal in shape, and it is zoned for single-family construction, and it meets the minimum lot size for this zone for such development. By way of some background concerning this project and the case in question, on February 27, 2007, the Planning Hearing Officer approved standards variance case number PVAR 2006-046 with condition. This variance permitted the applicant to construct a new 2-story residence with a 14-foot front setback and a 14-foot driveway length. However, the approval was never exercised and expired on February 27, 2010 after a 1-year extension. The case before you today is a brand new project. However, the design is different from the previous design that was approved, and this is being proposed by a new applicant. The property owners are the same. The only difference is that the front yard setback still remains at 14 foot. However, the driveway length has been increased to 16 feet from the previously approved 14. As I stated previously, the subject site is vacant and is zoned for single-family development. The proposed residence will be 2-story, comprising of 2,179 square feet of livable space. The project will meet all other zoning code requirements such as interior setback, lot coverage, floor area ratio, and parking. But due to the unique features of the lot, the applicant is requesting exception from 2 code standards, the front setback and the driveway length. To develop the lot, the applicant believes that there are limited alternatives exist on this property. If the subject is to meet the front setback and driveway length, the protected trees, sycamore trees, at the rear will need to be removed. Retaining the mature trees provides a number of benefits, such as the protection, retention, and maintenance of the city indigenous tree inventory. The trees soften the appearance of the proposed development and helps maintain a lush appearance that is similar to the existing undeveloped condition. Other features that are unique that warrants these exception requests is that due to the lot shape and the location in this neighborhood. The shape of the lot is unique from other lots in the neighborhood in that the majority of the lots in this neighborhood is rectangular in shape and does not front the wash as the subject property. So these features, the lot shape, the location fronting the wash, and the existence of 2 sycamore trees, limits in terms of how the project can be sensitive to the trees and still be able to reasonably accommodate a single-family home in this neighborhood. So the proposed front setback obviously will not be consistent with the neighborhood at large due to because there's some sort of uniformity throughout in this neighborhood. However, it will be consistent with its adjoining neighbors to the east at 701 Concord Street and to the west at 713 Omar Street. As you can see on map 3 on sheet A 101, Also, 713 Omar Street was granted a similar variance for a 15-foot front setback on March 10, 1947. So there's a precedent in this case, and what the applicant is requesting is similar to this, again, due to the unique features and the location of the subject property. In this regard, denying the owners an opportunity to develop this lot that otherwise meet the zoning code in terms of its zoning designation and the lot size would put them at an unfair disadvantage when compared to other properties in this neighborhood. Given the unique features of the lot and the sycamore trees, as well as the location on the trees, providing a detached garage would also be inappropriate. As you can see in the aerial photograph, the neighborhood is developed with a single-family residence and typically are provided with detached garages at the rear. The proposed subject property will be two-story with an attached two-car garage fronting the street. So this site planning is different, but again, it is consistent with the lot given its feature and the existence of the oak trees in the back. If a detached garage is to be provided, the rear tree would have to be removed in this case. As such, staff believe that the proposed exceptions to the code appear sensitive and recommends approval of the front setback and the driveway length with conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess maybe just a quick question, and I'm going to ask the applicant to cover this as well. Just sort of the history of the property, it sort of got rearranged when the wash went in. Is that correct?
The property was originally subdivided to be rectangular, essentially rectangular in shape, similar to other lots in this property. But because of the construction of the wash due to the 1934 flood, that caused the shape and the orientation of the lot, the subject property, and some of the nearby adjoining properties to be modified to a certain degree to accommodate the wash.
Okay. I have no more questions for you at this time. I will just make a few notes about comments received from other divisions, and going through their comments, nothing in particular stands out other than sort of standard code requirements for each of the individual divisions. I just want to note one comment from Traffic and Transportation, and it was really more of a comment that the site plan depicts two vehicles parked side by side in the proposed driveway. These vehicles are shown parked between the garage and the public sidewalk. And just as a point of information to the applicant, if for any reason a parked vehicle would encroach upon the public sidewalk, a parking citation could be issued by the Glendale Police Department in accordance with the California Vehicle Code. And this potential for encroachment obviously increases with this request for a reduction in the driveway length. So those are just the comments I wanted to point out from other divisions. And then finally, we have one letter and one email on file from it looks like immediate neighbors. Just voicing their opposition to the project. So at this point, I would like to ask the applicant to come forward and maybe tell me a little bit about the project, about the trees, about the lot, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Okay. Hi. Good morning. My name is Gio Aliano. I'm the architect for the project. The address is 430 Foothill Boulevard, Suite G, La Cañada, California, 91011. I am the applicant, as Mr. Dwang stated. I would like to sort of give kind of an overall, I'll be very brief. As Mr. Dwang stated, there was a variance already approved for this project. Several years ago, it was approved in 2007. It expired, and for that reason, we're back. The variance at that time was the variance that we're requesting today is exactly the same as what was asked in 2007. There was a minor difference with the driveway, which when the variance was approved, was actually approved at 17 feet, not 14. There was a revised site plan. But everything is exactly the same, and the variance request was for 14-foot driveway, but it got approved at 17-foot. So that's the reason why we're back, is because it expired, and again, as has been noted already, the Verdugo wash, the Arroyo Verdugo wash, is the main reason why there's a need for a variance, because that wash, in a sense, truncated the property. The property used to be a regular lot. The wash came in, it truncated the front of the lot, it moved the property line in several feet, and it basically reduced the width of the street, which is 50 feet along Omar, but in that portion of in front of the lot in question, the street is only 9 feet, just a little over 9 feet. So that is the main basis for the variance. The second basis, which is pretty fundamental as well, is that there are two mature trees on the site. And when you combine the mature trees and the truncated lot with the irregular shape, all those two things combined really prevent a normal development of this lot. The tree, there's one in the back, which is about 34 inches in diameter, sycamore tree, and there's another tree in the front, excuse me, which is another about 24 inches in diameter. The one in the rear basically prevents development completely. There's no way that one can build anything in the rear. The one on the side, southeast, prevents development further to the property. In other words, we cannot maintain a 6-foot setback on the side. We have to be much bigger than that. And we're keeping our building footprint fairly away from the trees. Now, our request is really to, we feel it's reasonable, is to allow a 14-foot setback like has already been approved in a previous variance. By doing that, it allows for a regular footprint, and it allows for a driveway that can be usable because of the way it needs to be angled in order for the 9-foot street to be practical. In other words, that 9-foot street, if you put the driveway any other way than we have, would not be usable because of the turning radius. So we tried many schemes, and this is the scheme that works the best. So our request is really simple, 14-foot setback in the front with a 16-foot driveway, which is actually 1 foot less than what was originally approved. So we're bringing the driveway further out one more foot. So in a sense, it's slightly different from that perspective. The footprint of the building, and the main difference between original variance and this one is also the footprint of the building has been slightly changed. We feel it sort of fits the site even more than before. We've been very sensitive to the trees. We have an arborist of record that has looked at the site, and they made recommendations and made very good comments with regard to the footprint, where they believe the footprint will not create any harm to the trees. Now, that obviously needs to be followed up by the arborist, and we understand that.
Okay.
Project goes in construction. But essentially, the footprint is the main variation from the previous variance. There really is very little impact to the neighbors. The neighbor immediately to the north of the property will have very little impact. The tree actually is already there. It creates a screen already. The building, the building is 2-story, but it's sort of stepped so that the northern edge of the building, the one that's closest to the northern property line, that building is 1 story and is 50 feet away from the neighboring property. The tree is much closer than the building. To the west of the property, there's an adjacent building, 1 story. Because of the diagonal shape of the site, the building, the actual dwelling, because there's also a garage on site, the actual dwelling at the narrowest point is over 15 feet from our property line to our building. There's a 15-foot difference, and there's another setback for their property. So we're talking about approximately 20 feet distance between the two buildings. And it gets bigger and wider as you go southerly towards Omar.
Okay.
So that building is definitely not impacted by our building. And then to the east...
The neighboring residence as opposed to the
713.
detached garage.
Yeah, the 713 Omar.
Okay.
The 701 Concord as well, there's a 1-story garage there. But again, the building along that edge is 1 story, and I believe it's over 12 feet away from the property. I think I kind of covered all the main points, and I suspect if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. At this point, I'll be happy to do that.
Okay. Can you just maybe tell me a little bit, and maybe this is for the property owners, but maybe a little bit how the neighborhood works in sort of these 3 lots? I mean, it seems like Omar just basically sort of acts as a driveway, and, just maybe how that's working.
Sure. Omar is a really nice street. I mean, it's 50 foot wide along as you move westerly from the property. There's a wash to the south. So the subject property actually has nothing across from it. It only has the wash. Mm-hmm. There's no other property facing directly across. But what's interesting about Omar, as you get close to this project, to the site, is that the street narrows and it becomes very pedestrian. There's actually a stair at the very end of Omar that links Omar to Concord, and then you can walk up and you can cross the bridge if you go southerly or northerly.
Right.
And so from a pedestrian sense, the development of this site would actually add to the experience, because now it's not an empty lot anymore. It's actually a developed lot with a family living in it with activity. And so we believe that will be an amenity. As far as the street to the north, that one there is not connected, obviously, to, I'm talking about Patterson to the north. Mm-hmm. That one there ends at Concord, and then you have to travel southerly to get to Omar, and again, enter Omar from those steps. There's a bridge across the wash, which is fairly tall. In fact, the bridge will be much taller than the building that we're proposing. So that element is seen very clearly. Now, what's the beauty about the end of the street is that there are a lot of trees. There are actually 2 sycamore trees on this property, and there's another sycamore tree on the adjacent property on Concord. Those 3 trees create a huge green mass. And when you couple that with the bridge, pretty much the bridge and the scale of the bridge disappears. And when you start putting a building in the middle of this mass of trees, it will do the same thing. The trees will do the work in terms of creating a very subtle transition from building to site and to the trees. So I think that's one of the most important features about the site is the green mass that already exists there. There's nothing like that anywhere else on Omar. Everything is 1 story, very small. There are some trees, but nothing like this. In fact, when you stand at the west end of Omar and you look towards Concord, that's what you see. You see this green mass.
Okay.
And I think that is a plus for the lot.
Okay. I guess question in regards to the design of the footprint, and I notice you're using some decking on the first floor that sort of maybe takes advantage of the trees and kind of puts you underneath their canopy.
You mean the deck?
The decks, right.
But the decks are lightweight construction, so that we're not really penetrating the root
Okay, so I
system.
mean, any of the recommendations that were part of the tree report in terms of hand digging,
Oh, yes.
all that
That
stuff,
will be
you're
followed through,
prepared
yes,
for,
absolutely. Yeah.
and aware of that.
For that reason, we have no concrete around that area, because we want the roots to breathe.
Okay. And there, I believe, in terms of recommended conditions from staff of reducing the front walkway,
I read
have you
I read the
read that? Or do
recommendation.
you have any
yes.
comment on that? Or
No, we can do that. We have 6 foot right now. But as the project gets developed, that could certainly end up being 3 feet as required.
Okay, so you would be
Yeah,
okay
that's
with that
no
condition,
reason.
if that were placed on the,
Yeah, it should be acceptable.
Okay.
It becomes part of a landscaping plan that needs to be refined.
okay. Okay. Do we know what year, I mean, it was after 1934, obviously, and the flood, but how long this configuration has been around?
Oh, it's in the configuration. Yeah, it was in after the Verdugo Wash was built, the lots were reshaped,
Okay.
or before, I should say. They were rectangular. Everything was pretty regular, except
It was a pretty standard block there
except
at
for
the
the
corners.
701 Concord. I had a radius property line to the east. But if you look at those maps up there, you can see clearly
Okay.
that after 1934, the Army Corps engineer put in the wash, and they basically took away property from this lot. They rearranged the shape of the lot. And
They
reduced-
rearranged the shape of quite a few.
yeah,
in
they,
that little corner,
They
yeah.
rearranged this one, and then 701 Concord, and then a couple on
And
Patterson.
713,
Yeah.
it looks like, got
Mhm.
impacted by that.
Yeah, everything had to be shifted up, and then the shape became more irregular.
Okay. And in terms of the driveway and accessing the garage from, I mean, you just imagine the cars pulling in and then backing out till it gets to the...
Yes,
to the
I mean, it
50 feet?
requires, we studied this quite a bit, and we had many different schemes, but this is the one that was able to, you'd be able to come down Omar, be able to make a left turn to the driveway, and then you can back up and make a right, back up into Omar, and then get out.
Okay.
Yeah. There's enough space here to, if we keep the 16 foot,
Mm-hmm.
anything smaller, I'm sorry, anything bigger, obviously we pull everything back, and then the house again becomes problematic in terms of making it buildable.
Okay.
But the orientation of the driveway is, right now, we believe it will work with the narrow street.
And has a similar orientation to, oh, no, that's a detached garage. But in terms of the driveway of 713, 707, and 701 are the ones, those last three houses
Mm-hmm.
are the ones that take access from the narrower part of Omar that was modified because of the wash.
Yes, 701 has a driveway, and that one there is, the driveway is fairly perpendicular to the street, and they can use, they're able to make that turn, yes. And then 713 also uses, yeah, I believe it uses part of that narrow part as well, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think those are my...
But I guess if I could summarize, the fundamental thing about the variance is that if, without this variance, it's impossible to build on this lot because the footprint will be too small. If you bring in the 25-foot setback from the street, you're not allowed a 14-foot setback. That will basically limit the development, and it will not make it won't be a useful footprint for a house.
Okay. Thank you, and I may call you back up if you have anything else to share. Okay, I'll move on to next set of speakers. Is it Angelo?
Yes. My name is Angelo Puglisi, and I live at 730 Patterson Avenue, the house behind the lot that they want to build. My main concern is, I just heard him, it's not a street, it's a driveway, 9 feet, and how these cars going to be able to back out when, right now they do it at Jack's house there, they back out all the way to get out of their driveway. And how I mean, there's hardly any room there to make any turns, trying to get out of there. So this, I understand they want the setback, but, you know, we have regulations and laws here, so we should follow the City of Glendale building codes. I have a letter here from one of the neighbors, too, that she had to go to work, a job interview today, and she writes that I would like to share my concern regarding the above-mentioned property, case number PVR 1211971. This is the second time I have had to address this issue with the City of Glendale, is why I'm against this proposed subject property. The first time was 5 years ago, on November 8, 2007. I wrote a letter and voted my opinion in person. The panel rejected this project, and rightfully so. I don't know if that was the case. Anyway, City Code requirements clearly against two code requirements. The standard variance of a driveway is a minimum of 20 feet in length. The subject property is proposing 16 feet. The standard variance of the front setback is a minimum of 25 feet. The subject property is proposing 14 feet. The calculations are 20 feet minus 16 equals 4, and 25 feet minus 14 equals 11. That totals a 15 feet difference that this space does not have. It is the backyard of San Juan Concord. The space is too small to build a home. The subject property is irregular shape and is located on a portion of Water Street with a substandard roadway within 10 feet. This roadway, which can be better described as a driveway, has already been shared by two existing homes, 713 Omar and 701 Concord backyard. An ambulance or fire truck cannot squeeze by through this driveway, yet the subject property is proposing to build home between these two properties. It's not even a street, it's a driveway. Please note that this driveway cannot be made wider because of the wash. It's directly in front of the subject property on Omar. So I don't know what the architecture is, but the way I look at it, it looks like a modern block that doesn't match the neighborhood architect. Most of the homes on Omar and Patterson and are Spanish style. What I look here is like a block with, there's nothing there that will match the surrounding homes. So, yeah, it's blocked by the trees, but it's still there. This the way I look at this picture right now, it's just a block. I'm sorry, just a block. So there's no Spanish architect at all that I see in there.
You want to summarize your comments and wrap up?
Yes, I'm against it because of the traffic. That anytime you build a house this size here, there will be more cars than 2 cars in the driveway. They'd be overflowing in the Omar, which is right now you can't hardly any parking, and Concord and Patterson there, which I live, which would be pretty hectic. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Sylvia.
Hi, Sylvia Puglisi, and I'm a resident of 730 Patterson, which is the home directly behind this property on Omar. 5 years ago when we were here, I was opposed to for all the same reasons. Traffic, especially to get emergency vehicles back there. Should there be a fire, there is no room. If you have another home there, especially a 2-story home, and with all the greenery and shrubbery and trees around, it would be very difficult to get emergency vehicles back there. A 2-story home, there aren't any 2-story homes in our neighborhood. I'm glad that the sycamore trees are being protected, and I would hope that the one that's directly behind the property, which would be like behind our property, because we have a very small patio, and if it weren't for that protected sycamore tree in the back of this property on Omar, this proposed home, 2-story home, would be butt up against our home, and that would be awful. I mean, it would be horrible. It would be like putting a wall right at my patio. So I would hope that the protected trees will continue to be protected, and that rear sycamore tree and any others on the property, I mean, these trees are hundreds of years old. They should be protected and should not ever be removed. Should he get this variance for the driveway granted? I don't even know how you can, even if you grant a variance, my suggestion is for the board to come out and view the property we always thought it was his backyard until through the years, Mr. Cushing made comment that he wanted, when his family was growing up, that they were going to add on to their existing home. That's why I always thought that was his back property. Until then, also in conversation through the years, mentioned it was a separate lot. Because if you go to the property site and you observe, it looks like it's his yard, not a separate property to build a two-story home. So I'm still opposed to a two-story home, but if the variance needs to be granted on the driveway to protect the trees, and so I won't have a two-story home directly up against my property, then so be it. But I think it's important to go and visit the site in person if you haven't done so. I mean, it's just an odd shape ending of the street. I mean, very narrow, and of course you can't go. There isn't any outlet. It's a no-outlet street because where it ends behind their property, it narrows 9 feet, and then the staircase goes up to Concord.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you very much.
And then between Carol and Jack, who wants to go first? Carol, Flynn?
My name is Carol Cushing. I live at 701 Concord Street. My husband Jack and I own that property as well as the adjacent property at 707 Omar. I would like to address Mr. Puglisi's comment about backing out of the 701 driveway. Yes, indeed, it is a challenge, and it has been successfully encountered for over 46 years. That's how long we have owned those two properties, over 46 years. So we do it every day of our lives, and when you do something that often, you really become an expert at doing that. So that is not an issue for us or any of our visitors. Our children may come and park in there. It's not a problem. Certainly the stairway giving access to that walkway there is a nice attribute for the neighborhood. People come by. That certainly will remain there. That's not going away. That's a city right-of-way, so that will always stay that way. The comment about most of the houses in the neighborhood of Spanish style, I would take exception to that because we have looked at that in trying to select a design for our property for a proposed structure, and that is simply not the case. The majority of them in this 500-foot area, I would question that they're mostly Spanish style, like stucco with red tile roofs. And then to Mrs. Puglisi's comment about a two-story house being an imposing structure in the neighborhood, I believe Mr. Aliano addressed that in the fact that the trees would be taller than this structure. And the canopy of the trees, you can tell what the canopy is just by looking here at the corner. You can't see anything there except the top of those trees. And this two-story house is nestled into that canopy. And for sure, those 100-year-old sycamore trees, they're not hundreds of years old, but the large one in the back, we expect that it is at least 100 years old. And it's been a joy for my husband and I, the tree and the children growing up and the beauty that it affords us. We look at it, every day of our lives, all three of the trees, actually, and we have cared for them appropriately with arborists over this 46 years. They're important to us, and they're going to stay there.
Last comment.
The last comment, I think the other issues that Mrs. Puglisi raised about having a house that's going to be right next to her backyard, that's a non-issue in the design of the footprint of the property on the lot. Thank you.
Thank you. And last card, Jack?
Jack Cushing, and we're the owners of the lot in question here, have been for 46 years. First, I'd like to point out that the lots there, the two lots that we have, and seeing over here, there's more trees on our lots than there is on all the rest of the block put together, practically. We have cared for those trees carefully every other year. We have an arborist come in at the cost of several $1,000s to take care of those trees. We don't want anything to happen to them. The last time we had this hearing, Mrs. Puglisi wanted to know what legal recourse she would have if something happened to one of our trees, because it would be hard on her view. Looking at their lot, their home here, on this lot, if we were to build this house, 2,000 square feet, you can see there would still be approximately 20 times as much yard space in the back as they have in their backyard space. They have a little 8 by 10 thing, and she wanted to make sure that we didn't ruin her view. Well, what about our view? Our view looks at the side of her house. Our other house looks at her garage, which is over our property line by about 3 or 4 feet, which we have never complained about throughout the years, but it ruins our view. So as far as the 2,000 square foot house, if the sycamore tree wasn't there, there would be no reason to try to build a 2-story house. I still see nothing wrong with it. We're not much higher than the top of their house. But basically, we need to put a house there. After all these years of caring for these properties and so on, and caring for these trees, we want to keep that backyard as a beautiful place. If we can build a house, we can really fix up right now, because I've had 5 years of bad health, and our kids are grown and gone now. Nobody wants the empty lot. Nobody wants to care for it. We all want to have a house, and the house would help the property taxes for the city of Glendale. So we want to build a house there and try to keep the two houses together if possible. We have a possibility that our son might take over there when we retire and leave. Or we have a couple other people that might live there and have the houses together. The backyard, and you can see the little strip there of our existing house, can be additional part of that backyard. So that can all be one backyard together there. And with that big, beautiful tree in the back there, plus the tree on the driveway, if you've seen the trees, we have another sycamore out toward Concord, but it's not nearly as pretty. These are 2 beautiful trees, well cared for 45 years, and I really resent the fact that something might happen to those trees, that they would need legal recourse to get the protection so they have a view, which we have no view of anything. They want the view of our tree. Fine, wonderful.
Okay, final comment?
No, that's about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll ask if the applicant wants to come up and have any closing comments.
I think Jack and Carol have done a good job responding to some of the comments. I just wanted to reiterate the question that came up about the safety. There's a fire and things of that nature. Yeah, the street is narrow at that point in front of the property, but fire trucks can access. Fire trucks have fire hoses that are several hundred feet long, so a fire truck can actually end at that location and be able to fight a fire. If that were not the case, we would have heard from the various departments that are involved in the review of this variance, and we have not gotten any comments whatsoever. As So that's all I'm going to say about that. I don't think there's an issue here in terms of safety. As far as the street itself being a driveway, it's not really a driveway, it's a legal street. It just happens to be narrow. And the driveways, the Cushing's residence right now on 701 Concord works fairly well in terms of getting in and out. We intend that this property will have the same ease of access. As far as the lot itself, it is a legal lot, and they have the right to build a building here. And the fact that the ordinance setback, stated in the ordinance, are restrictive in terms of this particular lot will make this lot unbuildable, and that would not be fair to this owner. And then lastly, I want to talk about the massing of the building. I think there was a comment about that. This project, if the variance is approved, will go through the normal process of the Design Review Board, and all these things will be addressed. This is an attempt to basically locate a building to make sure that it works, to make sure that the aesthetic and the massing works with the trees and the neighbors. As far as the style, that will get refined, but we did look at traditional styles, and part of the problem with the traditional style, like Spanish style, was that we would be required to have, in this particular case, when you start putting gable roofs or pitched roofs, you end up with more height.
Okay.
And so that was a concern of ours. That's why we ended up with these kinds of shapes. So I think I've said enough, but again, I want to reassure everyone that this project will go through the DRB process, and all the issues about the massing and the style will be addressed. And I think I covered. One last one. There was a comment about probably to the north. This project, as I mentioned during my earlier presentation, the one-story portion of this building is almost over 50 feet away from the north property line. And that is a one-story building. The tallest part of the building is to the west, and it's along the west property line. And even that is about, I would say, 45 feet away from the north property line. So there's no way that this building could ever be butting against the north property. It's impossible. We meet all the other requirements. This lot has 55% landscape, which is more than what's required. We're only covering the lot 36%, which is also less than what's required. And we are meeting exactly the FAR ratio, which is 40%.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you much. With that said, this case is taken under submission, and this hearing is officially closed.